Hey, welcome to a new episode of Last Call Baseball, number 142. I'm Dorian. You know I've been watching baseball over the last 2 months. Where are they playing baseball? The Latin American Winter League, specifically the Nicaraguan Winter League. It's over. Just about 3 days ago, I think. The team Gigantes de Rivas, the Giants from the town of Rivas, won the championship. It's their second one in 4 years, and they beat, in the championship series, Tren del Norte, Train of the North, in 6 games. Obviously, the team that I wanted to win the whole thing, the Tigers, the Tigres de Chinandega, the Tigers from Chinandega, didn't make it to. They made it to the round-robin playoffs, but they didn't win the championship. But I'm going to share with you some thoughts. If you didn't have a chance to enjoy the Nicaraguan Winter League over the past 3 months, or maybe you've been enjoying the Venezuelan Winter League, the Puerto Rican League, the Dominican League, the Mexican, etc. Initially, I think the defending champions from the previous winter, the Indios del Boer, the Indian Boers, actually from the Boer War. It's one of the oldest baseball clubs in the world, actually. People actually don't know that. They're based in Managua, the capital of Nicaragua. This team has some of the worst, I think arguably the worst fans in all of Nicaragua. No one shows up to the stadium. No one. They play in Dennis Martinez Stadium, and if you guys might remember, Dennis Martinez is one of the greatest Latin American pitchers of all time. He's Nicaraguan. He pitched for the Baltimore Orioles, the Montreal Expos, where he threw a perfect game. He pitched for the Atlanta Braves. He pitched for a whole mess of clubs. Very, very good pitcher. And in Nicaragua, they built the Dennis Martinez Stadium, which is actually the national stadium, to MLB specifications. I think the stadium holds something like 17 or 20,000 seats. It's beautiful to look at. You look at it on TV, and I was like, oh, that's probably some random MLB stadium that I haven't been to, or some really nice minor league stadium that I haven't been to. Boer finished last in the Nicaraguan Winter League, so they didn't make it to the round robin playoffs. But here I am picking on the fans, saying that they don't show up. To be fair, during one of the games, the announcers were commenting how expensive it is for just one person to attend a game at that stadium, much less a family of 4 or 5. And when you think about it, is it really any different than in the U.S. when you're like, oh, I have to pay $20 for the cheap seats for your kids, your niece, your grandchildren, someone you're babysitting, and then you have to go buy an $11 soda, a $15 hot dog. God forbid you go to a place that doesn't have public transportation. You're paying, $20, $30 to park at the stadium? So I get it. I get it, but it's still very, I feel the pain from the Boer fans who probably are like, you know what, I'd rather just sit on my couch, drink a nice Nicaraguan rum, flor de caña, or a nice Nicaraguan lager, and have the game on TV, because it costs a lot less than schlepping it out to this beautiful stadium. Another thought I've been sharing with you, watch the Latin American Winter Leagues. They're so much fun. What's crazy about all of the Latin Winter Leagues? They're ruthless. And this is what I mean by being ruthless. If you're a player that's cut or waived by the team, you're cut from the whole league. It's not like no one else can pick you up. As an example, let's say you're Jace Peterson and you get cut by whatever team he's with. He's in a week or so, he can't just get picked up by the Kansas City Royals. In Venezuela, in Colombia, in the Dominican Republic, everywhere in Latin America, you're gone from the whole league. That is insane. Because a lot of times these foreigners go and get paid big bucks to go play in Mexico. And they're like, after a couple of weeks, we're going to have to let you go. So your contract gets canceled, and you're going to have to find your way back home because it's against league rules for another team in this league to sign you. So a lot of times when these clubs are picking up reinforcements, they're getting them from the Mexican league, from the Venezuelan league, from the Dominican league, just anyone from another country has to come, and it's ruthless. I'm like, wow, maybe they need a players unit or something in these Latin countries. Another impression I have is, in Nicaragua at least, is the level of pitching leaves something to be desired. And what I mean is, there aren't a lot of good pitchers plying their trade in Nicaragua. I hope the clubs next year entice better pitchers to pitch in the league because it's fun to see these absolutely wacky 12-9 games. Or like a month or so ago, I told you guys about that insane Tigres versus León game where Tigres was up twice in the same game by 8 runs and they ended up losing 16-15. It was just, that's the type of stuff to make your brain melt. I love the offense. I love the passion. I just love watching good baseball, but I want the pitching to be a little bit better. And I think part of the problem is may not be the money. I don't know how much money these players make. Whether I know the leagues that pay the most are the Dominican Republic and I believe Venezuela. I'm not sure, but the Nicaraguan league needs to improve their facilities. And they were also saying that next year they're going to start enhancing some of the stadiums to have like pitch clocks and the radar gun so you can actually see how fast or how hard some of the pitchers are throwing. And I'm like, let's throw some like good coats of paint as well. Let's refurbish the seats because you can see them. They're kind of janky looking. But obviously you're looking at it with American eyes and you go to a Major League Baseball stadium and most of them are at least comfortable to sit in and they're fine. It's still good baseball. And seriously, if the Mexican Winter League and the Dominican Winter League weren't behind paywalls, I'd watch those games as well. The reason I watch the Nicaraguan Winter Baseball League is because it's free on YouTube. Why not? And it can help you with your Spanish as well because obviously the TV transmission is obviously all in Spanish, and it's still good professional baseball. And some of those guys, you had I think 3 or 4 Americans were playing in Nicaragua this winter. The league leader in steals, Jarrison Richards. I don't know. He's American. He's a redhead. He has a red beard. He won an award for having the most steals. I think he stole 20-something bases this year. And they had this American pitcher. I forget his name. They had another American outfielder who came over from Venezuela, Cade Goda. He was center field. He played for a few games in center field for the eventual champions, Rivas the Gigantes de Rivas. I say this every single year. It drives me insane that the MLB network does not show the Latin Winter Leagues. Like I said, from all the countries I've been mentioning over the past 5 minutes, I don't care about talking heads on MLB network going over the hot stove. I don't care. I don't care to see Airbud 5 fetch this for the 10th time in the summer or in the wintertime, excuse me. Enough with the talking heads on MLB Network. Enough with the film Major League 4 out of retirement. I'm done. Show the Latin Winter Leagues on MLB Network. It's a perfect marriage. A lot of those guys are still minor league prospects playing and getting extra at-bats, getting extra innings in these competitive Latin leagues. Some of those guys are ex-Major League Baseball players. These are guys that if you squint your eyes, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that guy on Team X. I'm going to wrap it up by saying cheers to the Gigantes, the Giants of Rivas on their Nicaraguan championship. I always encourage you to watch good baseball, whether it's in the US, Canada, Latin America, Asia, and our next guest did a baseball project in a different country. But before we get to that conversation, I do want to apologize for the audio on my part. Again? I know. It's completely operator error. You see, Last Call Baseball is it's a family affair. I have 300 of my closest family members. I'm joking. Who the heck has 300 family members? Like you're a sultan in the Ottoman Empire. This is a family affair. So everyone is entitled to 12 weeks of vacation. And it just so happens that over the winter time now, when I recorded some of these conversations, everyone's off and I'm doing it on my own. And to make it short, I hit the wrong button. We've taken care of that problem. Thankfully, you can hear our guest perfectly because that's the reason I do these conversations, to hear the other person speak.
This week, the special guest is Harry Zimmerman, an LA-based photographer. Harry, welcome to Last Call Baseball.
Thanks, Dorian. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Harry, everyone is saying that during the pandemic, everyone was fleeing California, specifically LA. But we've now had Shohei Ohtani move from Anaheim to Los Angeles. We've just had the Japanese phenom pitcher Yoshinobu Yamamoto move from Japan to LA. You've lived in LA for a long time. What makes LA so great?
I think the short answer would be variety and competition for the entertainment dollar. Teams really need to, because there are so many teams in the LA market. You've got the Angels, the Dodgers, the Rams, the Chargers, USC, UCLA, the Ducks, the Kings. That's a lot of teams. Plus the Sparks, the women's basketball teams. And I think to me, what I've seen is that you've really got to pull out all stops to survive in this market. And I think that's what the Dodgers have realized some years ago and why they've been on top for so long. And I think that there's a lot of competition for the sports and for things to do because LA is, you've got the beach, you're close, you're an hour and a half away from skiing, you're near the desert. There's a lot of things to do. And I think that teams that are serious about making a name, like the Rams have done it too, with what they've done in free agency and how they got to a Super Bowl a few years ago. So the teams that it forces teams to really strategize for the long term.
You touched upon LA is fantastic, not just for entertainment, but also I think LA is, as crazy as it sounds, LA is an underrated food city. It's arguably better than New York. And people were saying that everyone was fleeing California and LA. But in reality, is like once you spend time in LA and you're willing to pay the tax of living there. And it's two different cities. New York City, everyone complains about New York City, but not a lot of people leave because they're like, where am I going to go? Like, I can go move to, I don't know, Nashville or New Jersey or somewhere in South Florida, but I love LA. And especially if you're having some of these ball players, they have a certain means, it's a lot easier to swallow the tax bill and saying, I'm living in paradise. So why wouldn't I?
That's right. The food thing, LA really has made a name for itself with some very special chefs now. But really, the comfort food restaurants that have been here forever, that you could say are in direct competition, if you will, with some of with the reputation at least of some of New York's. For instance, pizza now, delis, classic Jewish delis like Langer's Delicatessen near downtown LA. Their number 19 pastrami is something I dream about, and maybe going there with a friend soon. And LA, pizza, LA, or rather New York, Chicago, Philly. Yeah, I'll give them that they still have the reputation for pizza, and probably deservedly so. But LA is still the land of the burger. And when I was a college student at USC, we used to scrape our pennies, nickels, and dimes and quarters when we were living wretchedly as college students to go to Tommy's original chili burger down on Rampart, 3rd and Rampart. And Tommy's is a chain, a local chain. I think there might be one in Vegas actually now, but that makes these incredible chili burgers, real gut bombs. If you're drinking late at night or studying hard and you want to go down there and really have a great chili burger, chili cheese fries, oh boy, you can't beat Tommy's.
I have to check out Tommy's because I thought for a second you were going to talk about In and Out, which I'm actually. This may be heresy on the West Coast. I think Shake Shack is better than In and Out, but I am going to check out Tommy's because I haven't had a chili burger, what is chili fried burger? We say, yeah,
chili burger, yeah.
Harry, the reason I asked you to come on was to talk a little bit about another place that has great food, Japan, and specifically as a photographer, you did it's called the Fanatic Project about. Well, tell us about the Fanatic Project that you did in Japan.
Sure. My love of photography. Well, I used to work in film. I went to film school, and I've always felt that I've been more visually orientated than anything else. And I wanted to work on my own projects, and still going back to the basics after a career in film as a camera assistant on feature films for almost 30 years. When I got out of doing that, when I retired from that, I found that still photography was something that I could do it on my own, and I could explore certain things that interested me. certain loves and passions, things that I was really interested in. When I was a little kid growing up in Oakland, my dad took me to the Oakland Coliseum during baseball season, during football season, and basketball season. So I grew up on the Warriors, the A's, the Raiders. In my adult life, I became more of a football fan, which I hope is not a problem on the baseball-oriented podcast here. But I still root for the A's. I have my whole adult life. So even though I live in LA, I don't root for any LA-based teams. I'm still loyal to my hometown teams, and you find that a lot in Los Angeles. The only local team I really root for is my college team, USC. So being a Raiders fan for many years, I've been suffering sadly at the performance of the team. It's been over 2 decades since we've been to a Super Bowl, and we lost the last Super Bowl we were in. But I'd go up to the games when the Raiders moved back to Oakland. I would fly up with a buddy from film school who was a Raiders fan from Fresno, and we flew up for years. And then we gave that up after a certain point. But what I noticed going to the Raider games was the tailgating, the fan partying pregame was something out of the 1970s NFL films. You'd like approach the Coliseum from the airport shuttle, and there would be a smoky haze over the parking lot. There was the east and west parking lot, and it was just so visual. And you'd arrive and you'd see campers from all over the western states there, parked out, decked out. You'd have pigs on a spit. You'd have people set up tents. And this is not uncommon in other sports venues around the country. I saw it in Green Bay when I shot a Fanatic project there, and other places as well. What really struck me was how the fans kept the spirit of the team alive, even though the players on the field were not necessarily living up to that standard back in those days, or well, I don't want to necessarily blame the players, but the team was not coming together, let's just say. The product on the field was very disappointing year in and year out. But the one thing that I noticed was the fans' enthusiasm. I noticed that about the Oakland A's also. Very determined fan base. When I thought about what I could do for a photography project, Fanatic project was born. And it was really to do like an anthropological study of sports fans, of different sports around the world, and not just the teams that I love. In fact, I still have not done one on USC. I've done one on the Warriors, A's, and Raiders, and I've done a couple on the Raiders. But I thought I wanted to explore what makes fans do what they do, be as enthused as they are, and to go all out and commit time, effort, money to this. What was it that was beyond the game itself that brought the fans together and contributed to fan culture? And I wanted to see if there was a universal aspect to this in other countries and other sports around the world, and around our country as well. So the first one I did, I went to Europe, UK, and Russia in 2018, and I photographed fans at the FA Cup, which was a soccer match between, at the time, Chelsea and Man United. And then on the plane on the way over, I sat to a local guy who told me about a rugby premiership game that was around the same time period. So I scrambled to get a ticket to that. And the FA Cup was at Wembley Stadium, where I'd never been, and it was an honor to be at this stadium. And for the rugby match, it was at Twickenham. I went to a cricket match at the Lord's Cricket Grounds, and I recommend that to any sports fan who is into stadiums and classic venues. It reminded me of it's a cathedral of sports. And granted, I could only stay for about 2.5 hours, and I didn't know what the heck was going on in the game, although some local British people from London were trying to explain it to me. But the food there is incredible. And so gradually I made my way back to Oakland, and that was the first Fanatic project I did, was a Oakland A's game versus Texas in 2018. I had also come up for a Raider game that weekend too. So I sort of was able to kill two birds with one stone. And that led me going to Japan eventually. I was aware of Japanese baseball. I didn't know anything about it. And planning these trips is, it's like producing a movie in a way, because not only are you planning your flights and your hotel, because you want to, if you're going to all the trouble and expense to document fans, you also want to see things around the city and around the country. So I had to plan a lot of things for this, and getting tickets also is a challenge on the Japanese websites for their local teams. It's not clear exactly where the seats are, if you can bring cameras in, things of this nature. So I was able to find a guy, a site actually, and let's see, I had bookmarked it here to share it with you, called japanballtickets.com. And that was a expat, a couple Western guys run this site, and they will help you get tickets. They'll help Westerners get tickets. And I recommend any baseball fan, any baseball nut fanatic, even if you're going to Japan just as a tourist and you're looking for something interesting to do, go to a Japanese baseball game. It's so different than the games here.
That is exciting. And before you had mentioned cricket, I was thinking about that because I actually had the pleasure. I did go visit the Lord's, what is it called?
Lord's Cricket Grounds.
Yeah, Lord's Cricket Ground. I visited as like, a tour, but I did actually go to a couple of the it's called 2020, because basically, as you said, you were there for 2.5 hours. So you're probably there for like a 4-day cricket test. But there's also another form which is just 20 outs basically. So it's kind of like baseball, but like faster. It's right. So they specifically compacted to 3. It's basically right around 3 hours. And I did see a handful of matches of the Lancashire, of the English, like the English league of cricket, the Lancashire Red Roses, and that was so much fun because it was compact. It felt very baseballish, and I went with some of my American friends And the good thing about going to a cricket match in the UK is that, surprisingly, for a country, you probably know this, but for a country that loves drinking beer, you can't actually drink beer. You can't actually take your beer to a stadium at a soccer football match, but you can at a cricket match, because I guess their thinking is, well, there's more refined people at the
more sophisticated. That's right.
Well, who knows? But now I'm going over to the other side of the globe. When you were doing this project in Japan, how did you find it in the sense of you laid out the picture perfectly about it in Oakland with the Raiders and how things are. It's almost like a slow build up to the actual game, that festivity. What is that? Is there anything unique before the games? Because we've seen some videos where in South Korea or Japan they have like synchronized chants during the game of the baseball games in Asia. But is there anything like tailgating or congregating before a match before a baseball game in Japan?
Well, that's a great question, and that's really what the goal of this project was. And I should say, to clarify what Fanatic Project is, it's really a love letter to sports fans. It's not about the games or the players as much, although I do take a few pictures of what's going on the field just when I lay out my story in pictures, so people kind of get an idea. But it's really about taking portraits of sports fans and photographing fans. So my camera is turned away from the field. It's really towards what's going on in the stands. I wanted to explore that as a cultural kind of phenomenon. As far as tailgating goes, the first game I went to in Japan was the Hanshin Tigers, which is one of the oldest Nippon professional teams. They play in the vicinity of Osaka, which is great, a great city to see as a tourist. If you're into seafood, which I'm not a big seafood guy, you definitely want to go to Osaka. And I was able to take the train, got off at the stadium beforehand, and there were fans milling about, but not like, for instance, what I was used to in Oakland, where there were these giant parking lots on either side of the Oakland Coliseum where fans would tailgate. And that was part of the culture. I mean, that was almost, in some cases, more important than the game. Fans are milling about. They were the colors were so striking. The Hanshin Tigers are yellow, white, and black, and they were playing the Hiroshima Carp, who are red. For a lot of these games, there's usually thousands of opposing team fans at each game, usually located in the outfield, and they do their chant. You had mentioned the chants and the songs, and so there were fans that bring in some musical instruments like trumpets and horns and things of that nature, and flags. You're allowed to bring in huge flags, and at the Hanshin Tigers game, which the stadium is beautiful. It's called Koshien Stadium. I'm sure my pronunciation is off, but it's in Nishimanoya, Japan, and I believe it opened in 1924. And it's covered in ivy from the outside, so it really looks like a classic old American, like a Wrigley Field cathedral of baseball. Baseball in Japan, which I learned and I didn't know, goes way back to the turn of the century. And so there are songs basically for each player that comes to bat, and they repeat these songs and chants over and over again. And when the opposing team is at bat, they have their songs for their players. So it's really entertaining. They have these beer girls which walk up and down the stands, and they're usually young, attractive women who have these giant tanks of beer, Asahi or whatever, on their backs, and they have these very kind of specific motions they do with their hands to alert the fans that they're there, to get their attention, and they get a workout. I tell you, these girls are amazing, and they also have cheerleaders too in Japanese baseball. And I think, if I recall, they had some sort of thing with some of the mascots, like people in costumes. Another thing in Japanese baseball is that each team or stadium has its own unique seventh inning stretch celebration. So, for instance, the Hanshin Tigers, which are one of the venerable franchises in Japanese baseball, they have this thing where they do a balloon launch in the seventh inning stretch. So I have pictures of that on my various social media sites if you're interested to see what the balloon launch looks like. It's these yellow balloons go up in the air. When I went to one other game when I was in Tokyo, called the Yakult Swallows. They're the kind of the secondary team in Tokyo. I think it was the Dragons, if I'm not mistaken. There's like a main team that are kind of like the Dodgers, and they play in the nice stadium. The Yakult Swallows play in a smaller stadium across town, and really that interested me more. I wanted to see what kind of the black sheep team and their fans look like. And they do a thing called the umbrella dance. So they have these little umbrellas that they unfold and they move them up and down. I got video of that also when I was there. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. The fans are very spirited, and the atmosphere really feels different than American baseball. There's a lot of entertainment. It's a feast for the eyes and the ears.
That sounds amazing. That's definitely been one of my things. I haven't been to Japan. I've been to other countries in Southeast Asia, but I haven't made it
Okay.
to Japan yet, which I definitely want to coincide it with their
Yeah.
baseball season. So it sounds like Japanese baseball has no use for like the PA announcer, where the players can't be picking their favorite salsa or hip hop or country song, the walk up song, because the fans pick it for them.
That's right. That's right. The fans have it all worked out. They are dialed in. And then I believe when they're on defense more, they have these inflatable bats which they hit, which makes an incredible racket. And they have a sing songs and chants for that. The other thing is the food, of course. The yakitori, the chicken on skewers, the noodles. I mean, they have, if I recall, hot dogs and things like that. But I was not interested in that at all. I just wanted to go for like real Japanese food at the stadium, real Japanese stadium food, because that's another thing I'm interested in is stadium food around the world and around our country. What regional stadium food people enjoy.
But I think the best thing about Japanese fans, not just baseball Japanese fans, but Japanese sports fans, they pick up after themselves. I remember in what was it? Everyone was amazed. I think Japan was in the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. And after some random Japan match, like they had pictures of Japanese fans. Like they were the only people in the stands. They were picking up after themselves. Like
Yeah,
that's just brilliant. If only we could be inspired by that.
that's right. That's right. I wish we could. Yeah, it's, you mentioned that, and going walking around Tokyo, and I would just, on a day where I would had a somewhere to go, I would try to walk, because you miss a lot taking the train or the subway in certain cities that have that, even though it's convenient. And I just try to get lost in the neighborhood, and there's just no trash anywhere. It's it's culturally, it's so different than here. I feel like I could go to Japan 20 times and not have a better understanding of the culture there. It's really a unique, different place. So.
Yeah, I love how they have respect for themselves and respect of others. It's like, why would you want to go to a place with this trash when I can just alleviate that by waiting until I get to the next trash bin?
That's right. That's right. And it also feels safe too, safe at the games, and there's no real violence or anything like that between that you see between opposing fans. Everything is very tame and pleasant experience.
That's honestly wonderful. You were mentioning that you had spent decades in the film industry. Now, obviously, you've done this project, and people will share your website at the end of our conversation. You have amazing film that you've posted online. How has your time in the film industry helped potentially make you a better photographer faster, or has it always been parallel that you were just always taking film on your own outside of your day job for a long time in the film industry?
That's a great question. I think that really at film school at USC, I was more interested in the camera and lining up shots than writing projects or directing. So I was invited by a couple people to shoot their advanced projects at USC. One of them went on to become a showrunner on Breaking Bad, actually, Peter Gould. And so a lot of people that I worked with went on to bigger and better things, which is really kind of fun. But as far as setting me up, since I was a camera assistant, I was in a unique position to basically, in my professional career, apprentice award-winning, very talented cinematographers. A lot of these people went on to win Academy Awards, or a couple of things that I worked on got nominated. But it was a chance to see how they set up shots, how to learn how composition. I tried to let light dictate composition. I'd look for situations or scenarios where there's interesting lighting, something interesting. You don't always have that option when you're kind of doing documentary style, for lack of a better word, still shoots like I was doing of the fans. I'd always try to pick interesting backgrounds, but the fans themselves were so colorful and visual. They really were a great landscape, just their faces. The other thing was preparation. When I was a camera assistant, I was responsible for gathering and prepping all the gear for a shoot, for a feature at the rental house. So, for instance, at Panavision or someplace like that. So you'd go in there for a week or 2 or 3 if it was a feature film, and test all the cameras, the cables, the lenses, make sure you had all the accessories you need, remote focuses, things of that nature, all the tools we needed to achieve the complex shots of today. And so it was really a lot of responsibility, particularly if you're going out of the country on a job where you couldn't just send a Teamster, into Hollywood to get a cable if you had if you needed something. You really had to make sure you had doubles, triples of everything. And that helped me on these shoots, particularly going out of the country, was to be organized, to have a backup body, for instance, to bring 2 cameras into stadiums. And a lot of these stadiums don't allow professional cameras, and I didn't have press passes for any of this stuff. I bought a ticket like every other fan, and I went in as a fan, observing and taking pictures. So I used there's a nice Panasonic Lumix that they have that has a 1-inch sensor, which takes great pictures, and Sony RX100. These are smaller, more compact cameras, but you can change into professional mode, so you can control, the shutter, the exposure, everything yourself, which is what I was doing. What it taught me, my career as a camera assistant, was to be organized and to do all my research, to double check things like, if I was going from China to Japan and I had a game and I had one of these baseball games coming up, to double check that the tickets with the ticket guy, that he was sending it to the right hotel and all this kind of thing. So there's a lot of logistics involved. And it taught me to be early, to, leave early, so I wasn't under pressure of trying to find a new place, especially in another country. I was surprised at how little English was spoken in Japan. So there wasn't a lot of communication between myself and my subjects, other than me pointing at my camera and pointing at them, and they knew what I wanted, and that sort of thing. So I would say apprenticing under some great cinematographers, so I could learn to work on the fly a little better, and organization. Really, all these shoots, the one I did in England and eventually ended in Russia at the World Cup in 2018, and the shoot in Japan, all were like producing little movies from a production standpoint.
I love how you're saying that you set up your shots, whether it's obviously for a film or for your own photography projects. I use two cameras. I'm an amateur photographer, but I mean, we have to emphasize amateur. I use the Polaroid SX70, and I have a Minolta. What is it? The MRT 101, I think, is like the 35 millimeter click and shoot.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
Most of my film come out very badly. I think it's operator error. The Minolta, just recently, my Minolta, the film, the door broke, and so I had an entire roll ruined. I didn't know that until afterwards. I actually send my film to be developed right there in LA to what is it, dark lab room.
Okay. Are they in the Valley?
I think so. You just send it out to them, and like in a week or so, they send out your 35 millimeter roll, and they send you back whatever you ordered. And
good on you shooting film still. My respect. I'm all pretty much digital these days, but
let me ask you. I'm going to retire the Polaroid, even though I love that's not the novelty, but just the charm of having an instant film.
Yeah.
What should I be using going forward?
That's a tough one. It depends on what kind of stuff you're doing and what you're using it for. I mean, I'm a Canon guy, so I went from my old AE1 that I inherited from my parents, 35 millimeter film camera, and to a 5D Mark II, and then a 5D Mark IV, and now I'm shooting an R5. This is you want to shoot film still, huh?
Portraits, or just going out and about. Right. Obviously, I'm not planning on going and taking it at a local high school football game or anything like that.
Right. You might want to look at a used Leica or something like that. In some of these camera stores, they have some really good used equipment, and Leica can be really expensive. But a lot of people are trading that stuff in to transition over to digital. So if you're doing portraits and things of that nature, Leica has such beautiful glass for that stuff. So I'm not sure what the numbers are off the top of my head, because I'm not really a Leica guy, but that, or I don't know, if you could find like a used Hasselblad, you'd be amazed at what you can find on eBay. And if you really want your stuff to look unique and special, then I'd look into Hasselblad or Leica if you're doing portraits and you still want to shoot film.
Yeah, the camera I've really had my eye on is the Minolta CLE, which was kind of like the Minolta was making Leicas for Leicas, but they just made like their own, I don't say knockoff version, but like super high quality, but it just didn't say Leica on it, and they stopped making them, I think, like in the 70s or something. For resale, it's over $1,000, and it's like I need to be sure that I'm good enough to actually have this piece of art in my hands to be able to justify that price.
There's some schools of thought on this. The great thing about photography as a art form is that you learn something every time you go out. And I do. I've gotten good and fast just from repetition Unfortunately, COVID kind of derailed Fanatic project for a while, and because of some other health things I got left over from the film industry, I've got to do a shoulder replacement, and I've got to get an epidural in my back. Just I'm falling apart. But
You sound like a retired NFL quarterback.
God, yeah. Well, this is what almost 30 years of lifting thousands of pounds of camera gear in the motion picture industry can do to somebody. So seriously consider it if you want to be a camera assistant. So I have not got it up and running again, but I'm dying to. I already know some things that I want to shoot. I want to shoot some regional soccer games in Scotland and Ireland because I've been researching some of these stadiums, and like the baseball stadiums and some of them in Japan that have this great history. Same with some of these stadiums there that are 100 years old. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. You were asking me about cameras.
Yeah, I was just considering the Minolta CLE, but the resale value online is well over $1,000, and I'm like, that's a
Right.
steep price to pay for someone who's a weekend photographer.
Yeah, it's a way to look at it though, because it's your palette, it's your brush, and I firmly believe that to go out with something that you really like to work with, that's a key thing in photography. And frankly, a lot of people that I know are really almost more into the gear than actual photography. That's a thing with photography. It has a real cult kind of attraction to the gear. It's like people who are into watches and just like, into collecting fine watches. People are into collecting fine cameras. For me, it's always been a little, and you can tell probably by talking to me, it's been a little more utilitarian use, that I really want gear that I can toss around in a suitcase or bag or bring with me. I went to Antarctica earlier this year, and I needed tough gear that could withstand the elements. That's where you also want to bring a backup body, by the way, and as much backup stuff as you can fit, because you never know.
Yeah,
But
I'm not a fan of the cold, and especially you living in LA, cold. What is it? I love LA summers because it's hot during the day, and then at nighttime it's like in the 60s. It's like sweater weather. Perfect.
it's
It doesn't
great.
actually ever get cold.
That's right. And that's one of the things that people love about going up to Chavez Ravine and catch a Dodgers game during the summer. There's nothing like it. You're there in your shorts and a t-shirt. It's at night. Even in the fall or the spring, same. You go to Philippe's before the game, get yourself a French dip, and you head up there. Philippe's is a classic old school restaurant. They claim to have invented a French dip sandwich. So you'll see a lot of Dodger fans there pregame. Anyway, sorry, I digress again. Yeah, I think it's good to find something, bottom line, that you're comfortable using, that you feel confident in. As far as worrying about your skill level or your artistic level, this is something that's always going to evolve. I mean, I look at the pictures I took on Fanatic Project even at the beginning, and I look at the ones that were more recent, and I feel that the pictures got better. And so I do a lot of concert photography, but again, shooting as a fan from the crowd. So I feel that where you pick to your seat is very important for background, for band members lining up, things of that nature. So I feel I've got better at that as things go on.
I'm taking away two good points from you because you're talking about the gear, and as much as I love Polaroid, I don't like that the SX70 is basically just like a box, and so it's just very clunky to be carrying it
Right.
around all day. And then with the
Right.
Minolta, it's actually made like, there's actually real metal in it, and it's pretty heavy. I still
Yeah.
have my strap, but it's like after an hour or two, it weighs down
Yeah.
on you. And I just want a smaller thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to I don't know like B&H or something and just hold it in my hands before I decide this is the one for me because I want
Yeah.
something again. If I'm walking around, I want to be able to just whip it out and take candid pictures of people and things.
That's right. And you make a great point. You to go to have access to a place like B&H or any of the great camera stores in New York. It's like Sammy's camera here. To go in and be able to hold the thing and look at it and compare it, because we're so into our online buying that there's not that tactile relationship. And a camera, really, it should be an extension of your head and your eye, and it should be something comfortable and light, depending on what you're doing. For me, doing Fanatic Project, I needed compact cameras that I could bring in and not draw attention to myself. So, and a lot of venues, some around internationally, do allow detachable lens cameras in, but you have to research that, and sometimes you can't get a straight answer. But actually, the guys who got me the tickets, I asked them about that, and they said that you could take cameras in situations in certain stadiums. So,
Harry, you've been giving me a lot of advice. I'm going to give you one piece of advice. If you want to do USC, try to do it as soon as possible before Caleb Williams decides to turn pro. And then you won't be able to, you're going to have to fly to like some terrible town like Chicago or Carolina to see the poor guy fail in the NFL.
It's too late. I missed my shot with Caleb. He's not playing in the bowl game tonight, and he's going to go pro. So it's going to have to be whatever Lincoln Riley can
or try to get media pass to go to his pro day, because they always have those throwing for the scouts, and maybe you go down to take some film of Caleb Williams, probably the first pick in the National Football League draft in a few months.
Probably. Yeah.
Eric, I want to thank you for joining us. But before we let you go, we talked about food. We talked about Tommy's, the burger joint. You just talked about the French onion dip just a few minutes ago. What I always love to travel. I love LA. I love going to LA. If someone were to go to LA to go see a USC football game, a Dodgers baseball game, it doesn't matter where. What are your preferred local places for coffee, a drink, food, whatever?
Well, let's see. I live on the west side of LA in Marina del Rey. There's a small local chain of coffee places called Tanner's. There's one in Culver City, and there's one I like near the beach in Playa del Rey, where you could literally get your coffee and walk to the beach. Playa del Rey is a very kind of out of the way little old LA style beach town, like an old kind of surf town. And Tanner's Coffee is a great place to just grab a book, hang out inside, have some good coffee, and they have really awesome pastries in there too, and sandwiches. It's got a lot of atmosphere to it. And as far as a bar also in Playa del Rey, which is just south of me in the marina, there's a little bar called the Harbor Room. And when I say little, I'm not joking. This is like a watering hole for people who are boat drivers. You get the feeling, there's some like your sort of hipster Hollywood types who come down just because of the place. It's attached to an Italian restaurant called Cantillini's, which is an old school red sauce Italian place. So while they don't serve hard liquor, they do beer and wine. There's a little passage, literally a passageway from the restaurant to this bar called the Harbor Room, which they allow you to get your drink there and take it to the restaurant if you want. And when my dad was alive, we would go there for our victory celebration to have Italian food, but we'd always go get him his ice chilled vodka first at the Harbor Room. Great little dive bar. For a really nice place on Sunset Boulevard, you'll go to a place called the Tower Bar, which is in the Sunset Tower Hotel, Sunset Plaza Hotel. It's on the south side of Sunset Boulevard, which is right in the sweet spot of everything that you want to see on Sunset Boulevard. All the music venues like the Whisky a Go-Go, places like that. The Tower Bar is a restaurant, like a steak place, but it's a great place to drink. There's almost always a celebrity sighting there if you're into that sort of thing. I know Mick Jagger goes there when he's in town. Oh, Musso and Frank in Hollywood, old school Hollywood steak place where you've got the uniformed, where you've got the waiters with their names stitched on their jackets and bartenders. And these guys have been around forever. One old timer, I think he just retired, and he always made Keith Richards his drinks back when Keith was drinking. Keith would sit at one of the booths there and order the flannel cakes, which they used to have. They may still do breakfast there. I'm not positive. But that's like a steak place, an old school Hollywood place, been around since the 20s, I believe. I've shot in there several times because it just had, it's like the red booths, red leather booths. And there was a movie called Hitchcock, which I did. We shot a big scene in there. That's a great spot. But I can't emphasize enough Tommy's if you're in LA. Yeah, In and Out, it's sort of in that burger war thing with Shake Shack, Five Guys, these chains. But I say if you want a real LA burger experience, you go to Tommy's and you get a gut bomb. You get a chili burger, chili cheeseburger, you get the chili fries, and I tell you, you'll be in heaven. And I mentioned Philippe's. If you're going to a Dodgers game, it's in Chinatown, oddly enough, but it's a place where they claim there are two places in LA that claim to have invented the French dip sandwich. Philippe's is one, and they also have full breakfast and pastrami sandwiches, turkey, everything. If you're not in a French dip, that place is awesome. In fact, I may be going there soon with a neighbor in my building. We were looking to go to comfort food places around LA, and that was definitely on our list.
I'm definitely looking forward to definitely checking out Tommy's next time in LA. Harry, I want to thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking with you. Let us know where we can find some of your work online if you want to share anything from for your social media as well.
Okay, thanks. Probably Instagram is the best place to experience Fanatic Project. It's Fanatic_project on Instagram, because I also have my own account, which is at Harry Zim, where you'll see just some of my other photography. Or you can see all the pictures that I've done, which I think you did, off my photography website, which is zimmagery.com, ZIMMAGERY.com. And there's a button for, there's a Fanatic Project gallery. But on Instagram, there's more of an opportunity where I sort of explained what was going on a lot of these shoots of fans of sporting events around the world. But on either one of those, there's also my rock photography and travel photography. So if you're curious about Antarctica, there's a big Antarctica gallery there too, which I did this year, which is really cool, and lots of rock stuff too.
The conversation with Harry is inspiring me to pick up my camera and just take random pictures of squirrels and crocodiles and whatever. And also it's inspiring me to fix my audio. Again, I apologize, but thank you for Harry for spending some time with us. And to celebrate Harry and the Fanatic Project, what I'm drinking when I was producing, editing, and recording this podcast is a delicious drink from the land of the rising sun. It's called Amahagan. Of course, I don't speak Japanese, but Amahagan, it's a malt whiskey from Nagahara Distillery in Shiga, Japan. This is a nice winter drink, and it just gives you that nice heat when the malt whiskey goes down your esophagus. Nay, when the Amahagan goes down the esophagus. I'm having it neat, but no, I lie. What am I talking about? I read that for whiskey, you should do is have it neat, but have a splash of water, because apparently the H2O does something to the whiskey, the composition of it, to open it up and make it better. Nevertheless, drink it the way you want to. I don't care, and you shouldn't care how people see what you drink. So cheers to the good people at the Nagahara Distillery for this delicious Amahagan malt whiskey. And while you're drinking and you're scrolling through social media, give us a follow if you want on Twitter, Last Call 4040, or give us a follow on Instagram, Last Call Baseball. Or if you don't want to follow us, that's okay too. Thanks for listening to Last Call Baseball. Be great and get home safe.